With the start of WNBA training camp just around the corner, the next Indiana Fever beat writer Tony East is here to chat about who the Fever drafted last week, what to expect out of training camp, which starts on Sunday, how the team has rebuilt under general manager Lin Dunn, and we'll also take a quick look ahead at the 2024 season. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and happy Wednesday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, we at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. Last month in March, I think we had 198. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, including Tony here, one on more than 15 NCAA beats, so get that YouTube subscription up, and you can also support us by subscribing to The Next, $9 a month, $72 a year at thenexthoops.com. Today we'll be talking all about the Fever ahead of training camp, which starts on Sunday, including who they drafted, what the team did in free agency. We'll also be talking about the team's last few years under Lin Dunn, as well as look ahead to the 2024 season. Joining me today is The Next's Indiana Fever beat writer, Tony East. Okay, I mean, we have to start with the obvious. The Indiana Fever picked Caitlyn Clark, number 1 overall in the WNBA draft. What does she bring to the team?
Notoriety, guard play, everything. I mean, it's just, it's fascinating in that it's like so much to bring together at once because obviously the basketball fit is immaculately good, right? They were a better shooting team last year, but they've needed to become a better shooting team for forever. She's a good shooter. They've needed to become a better passing team since I've been covering them. All right, I think Danielle Robinson's probably been their best passer in that time, right? An amazing passer right away. Dream fit with the Leah Boston, right? Their number 1 pick from a year ago. Their partnership just naturally makes so much sense, both positionally and skill set wise. They're going to plug a lot of holes that the other player doesn't have. I could go on and on about the basketball fit, but even like for a team that won 5 games a couple seasons ago, to go from that to immediately like 36 games on national TV, new local broadcast plans, every team is like, yeah, we need a bigger arena for this game with the Fever coming to town. It's like everything changes immediately, both on the basketball floor and off. And I think that has been a really interesting part of what she brings to the Fever is just like this change in attention. And I think that will become a basketball story is like, what does, when they show Diana Taurasi already made it a basketball story. Every time they play anybody, yeah, they're going to be some young, spunky team that won 13 games last year, but it's really going to be like, oh, we want to beat the Fever. We want to play this team. It's all new and fresh and very exciting. And it's going to be a joy to see not only how she fits with the Leah, but a Kelsey Mitchell, a Nelissa Smith, the Katie Lou Samuelson, such a natural fit with the rest of those players, how all that comes together to make this team better because in every way she's, obviously a wonderful player, but kind of exactly what the Fever needed as a player.
And you were at Clark's introductory press conference. What was the vibe from her as well as head coach Christy Sides and general manager Lin Dunn?
Yeah, those are fun in a lot of ways for me because I like to see that all the Caitlyn's done, right, since the Final Four is, SNL and then producing a documentary and then go do media at the draft and get drafted and then come to Indy and do media here and then go to Pat McAfee and then go back to school and finish school. It's like her life is just thing after thing after thing after thing and answering questions from strangers and being in front of cameras. Like at some point to me, I'm like, is this going to be the moment where she looks exhausted? It's early in the day. She just flew in from a different state, right? Nope. She's ready to go. She's excited. She's in a new place, but clearly somewhere she wants to be, right? That was one of the first questions in the press conference was, and she said this, I think it was the Des Moines Register who had the interview where she said, the lottery is going to influence my decision. And like Indiana was a place among a few that she would have said, yeah, I'm ready to go pro and go there. It's close to my home. I like what they have. She even mentioned that her boyfriend does work for the Pacers, which is, of course, very convenient for her lifestyle. But just to see her be, into that moment, like, I'm ready to show who I am to all these new people, to be eager to answer those questions, to be so excited about, she came in through the practice floor that she's going to practice on. I think she practiced there for the first time today, actually, as we speak, yesterday, for everybody listening. Just so cool to see her in that setting. And, again, I would not fault any player for getting up there, and they're gonna, they can't be a total dud, right? But for not having all the energy in the world, or for being over answering a question every single day for 6 days about the same questions and the same kind of stuff. But she was all over it. And Christy Sides, Lin Dunn, of course, equally excited to have someone like that on their team. And I mean, Lin Dunn's plan, of course, there's been some lottery luck involved, but has been exactly what the Fever needed. Instead of running in place on the treadmill of mediocrity for years, and Sides and her energy and her, passion for what the team needed to do to turn around has been really a good fit for this young group. And I think all of it coming together to be out there with Caitlyn was meaningful for them too. Like, their lives and jobs have changed so much since even the end of the 2022 season. So seeing all of that in one setting was just a joy and delight to see.
Yeah, and for our listeners, if you haven't gone and looked on the Fever social media to see some of the post-draft reactions or post-drafting Caitlyn Clark reactions from Lin Dunn and Christy Sides, go check those out. They will put a smile on your face. I just like seeing people that are happy, and those are I'm not sure you could have found two happier people back on April 15th.
I think those are so funny because they knew since February, right? Like, it's so funny that the emotion is still excitement and relief when you know what you're going to do and you finally do it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the expected emotion should be, because I don't work for the Fever, obviously, but like, they've known since the end of February they had the first pick and Caitlyn Clark's going to go pro. It was fait accompli that they were going to do it. And they did, but they were still amped. Like, I think that says a lot about what she brings to the franchise.
Yeah, and I think you might have asked the question to Lin Dunn afterwards of how long it took her to put the pick in. She said about 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
and that, I think, just sums up the excitement in Indy right now.
Somebody right by said, "Why that long?" Which also made me laugh, because Lin had to pretend to go through the protocol. It's silly with the first pick, right? Like, why is the team with the first pick on the clock? They've been on the clock for months. But yeah, that was kind of the other line I wanted to take with the draft, is like, that they knew this since February. Like, what were they doing the day? Do they remember what they were doing the day Caitlyn tweeted out her graphic with her, I'm going pro, loved Iowa, this was great. And I don't know of a player who's made that long announcement and then gone back to school. But like, if you're either of them or anyone who works with you, you have to be like, all right, I want Iowa to do good in the tournament just in case she decides to change her mind. But, Lin remembers like falling off the couch, and, Christy sending her the tweet, and they're all excited. Like, that's really when the pick was made. And that says a lot about how exciting it was that just the announcement got them to that level of reaction.
Definitely. And can't forget, the Fever also drafted Celeste Taylor from Ohio State and Leilani Correa from Florida. Do you think either of them have a chance to make the roster? And if so, what would they bring to the Fever and how would they fit in?
Yeah, so, Celeste, of course, with her Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year resume, is somebody. Christy Sides always jokes about, like, we come in the door for training camp, defended 90 feet, let's go, energy, defense all the time. And I think that might be a natural fit for their team. Victoria Vivian's via her buyout agreement now with the Storm. Maya Caldwell kind of near the back end of the roster, Grace Berger. Like, there's a chance I think Celeste Taylor could make this team as, a depth guard who can play defense, right? And they really value what that can be and what that versatility can be. Who knows how good Caitlyn Clark's going to be defensively in the pros, but as it stands, their guard rotation certainly could use a kick in the pants defensively. So I think she's got a shot. Correa, great shooter, got him up at Florida these last 2 years, and really accurate her last year at St. John's too. So shooting's always valuable. I watched Taylor Mikesell, I think, make 1,000 threes in a row during training camp last year, but she did not end up making the team. So I think there's a shot for both of them. Victoria Saxton made the Fever roster as a third-round pick last year, right? There's still some questions about what the Fever's front court rotation is going to look like, more so than their back court. But I think Taylor definitely has a shot, especially with Vivian's no longer with the team in terms of like being that 11th or 12th player. It's going to be a little harder for Correa, but it might depend on how camp goes. And, can Maya Caldwell stand out? How much better than last year does Grace Berger look? But they certainly have skills that make sense as a fit on any team, including the Fever.
Awesome. Well, coming up next, we'll get into the Fever's free agency moves, what to expect from training camp, and more. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's not too early to start thinking about what you're getting your mom for Mother's Day. You can surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. My mom has a sweet tooth, but whether your mom is the same or if she's a tech enthusiast, beauty connoisseur, or a fan of the great outdoors, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more with DoorDash. You can get thoughtful gifts your mom deserves with the convenience you need by using same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers or gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Order now and get everything you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out the win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends and get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Tony, doing a quick flashback, so much has happened since free agency. Let's catch up our listeners. What did the Fever do in free agency?
Yes. First and foremost, I think the most important thing they did is Katie Lou Samuelson in the door. I found it very funny to watch her tour of Gainbridge Fieldhouse video during the free agency period because clearly Disney on Ice was still happening in the arena. So no basketball court, just walking through the arena. But, it's been like the right time for her, I think, to be with the Fever in terms of, she's a kid now. She's more family oriented. She needs a situation that shares her values. And so having nice facilities, a locker room for her own space, and a team that really needs her and can want to open the pocketbooks together was all the perfect fit to bring her in. I think that is obviously the headliner of what they did in free agency, right? They need wing depth, not really badly, but, as you look at their roster, like the only really natural wings on their team right now are Lexi Hall, and you can kind of squint and say Christy Wallace is a wing, I guess, but I probably wouldn't. Maybe Celeste Taylor could be a wing. I doubt it. So they needed depth at that spot badly. So not only to get someone that they needed, but fits their skill sets perfectly. I mean, her last 2 years at over 35% from three, took 5 a game with the Sparks in 2022. If she can be that player, that's, of course, valuable. Very good team defender as well. Like all that stuff will just really naturally fit in. I am penciling her in as the 5th starter for the Fever right now, mostly because of her natural fit on the wing, but those skills I think will just be, spacing around Caitlyn Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Nelissa Smith will be valuable. Someone who can just kind of ping pong off of actions with Kelsey Mitchell is really valuable, right? Very good fit for what they need. And that kind of slots everybody, even some younger players, into roles that, make a lot of sense. And then Damiris Dantas too, bringing in someone who also can shoot. I think that's if you've caught a theme from Caitlyn Clark and Correa and Dantas and Katie Lou Samuelson, it is certainly that the Fever wants some shooting at every spot. Didn't shoot very well at the Lynx. She also did not play in the W last year, but 34% in her career as a shooter, but still like is a good rebounder, has some post presence. We'll see what level she's at this season, but to add her into the front court rotation with Smith in Boston, right? They really struggled at those backup spots last year. Zoe B and Emma Cannon were fine, but they were more veterans than really key contributors. I think adding some depth there was really valuable. Those were the two big things they did, right? Protected contracts. So clearly the 2-year deals for both of them. So clearly they want them to be a part of what the team is doing and in the rotation. And they really needed that wing depth. They really needed some front court strengthening. And it just so happened they were able to do both while getting shooting. I think it's really natural what Lin Dunn pursued in free agency. And that's exactly what she said she would do. And she did it. I think those were really good additions.
And we'll talk more about what Lin has done with the Fever in her tenure in our next segment. But just this week, the Fever exercised Nelissa Smith's 4th-year option. What has she brought to the team in her first couple of years so far, and what will she continue to bring?
Yeah, her season is maybe not the most important for the Fever per se, but like maybe among the most interesting to me this coming season. Like she's going to be critical to their success. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to belittle that with what I just said, but how she plays on a team where there's clearly a natural person to be, in the post a lot in Aaliyah Boston, clearly a natural shooter and screener, and clearly the lead passer too. What does Nelissa Smith do to really fit in this year, right? She's very good. She's an excellent player. 15.5 points and almost 10 boards per game last year. Lin Dunn and Christy Sides both said if she didn't get hurt, we're on this road trip, and they played the Sparks, which is important because the Sparks were not an electrically good team last year, right? Smith was injured when they ended up playing them and losing to them, I believe, twice in close games. Like the Fever thought they might make the playoffs if they had her all season. Now they were in the lottery instead, which obviously worked out a great deal for them in the end. But that's how highly they think of her, is that like her swinging those results, is significant. So what stands out to me about like looking back at her first 2 seasons is she was a great 3-point shooter as a rookie, and that really escaped her. 10% drop in 3-point percentage last year, but was way better inside the arc. You saw that in Athletes Unlimited. She did media and talked about she felt so natural in AU, like playing center a lot, being around the basket. She's not going to be playing center for the Fever. So how does she blend those skills that she's very good elbows and in, great score there, great on the glass. Her defensive mobility has gotten better with some of that shooting, at least potential that she showed early in her career, because putting all that together would make her like the dream 4, right? The 2-man actions she showed with Boston last year were terrific. If she can play 15 feet and out around what they also have on the team, I mean, there's a reason they picked up her option. They think she's going to be really good. So if she's not a clunky fit at all, I mean, their young core set, right? They have it all in place already, and she's probably a part of it anyway. I just think that there's like questions about exactly what that's going to look like. And maybe I think too, what I wondered is, could she just be backup center, right? At times this season, she's the first sub out for whoever they decide is their backup 4. If that's Temi Fagbenle, if that's Dantas playing the 4, and then Smith's their reserve 5, that could give her natural reps as a post player, or lots of screen and roll stuff too. So she's just a very interesting player and important player to me in terms of what their next steps look like, in terms of how much of their young core do they feel really solid on. Clearly they like her a lot, right? What does her growth look like this season? How does it all fit with the pieces they have? Because clearly a very good player in their growth pattern. They clearly are very high in her. What does that actually look like on the floor this season? I think it's a big question for this team, because she's tremendous and has evolved a lot already as a pro.
And, training camp starts in just a few days. I can't believe I'm saying it. It feels like the college season ended 30 seconds ago really and the draft was yesterday. But what are you expecting out of the team's training camp? Breakout players to watch, or what you're most excited to see?
Gosh, I mean, how they shape their offense now, just given the change that they have at point guard coming, will be interesting. Like the way they played last year was really effective for what they had, I think, on the offensive end. They made the most out of Eric Wheeler's speed and passing, and Kelsey Mitchell, finally a first-time All-Star, and Aaliyah Boston, of course, tremendous. But that was a big shift for them in terms of the fact that they didn't really play through the post as much before that for a bajillion reasons. One, and at the top of the list, being they didn't have Aaliyah Boston on their team. But how does that look now, right? Do they have to reshape the way that they play with Caitlyn running, taking the ball up now, and Kelsey Mitchell being a little more off the ball, and Aaliyah, now having a very obvious pick and roll partner. Like, how does that shape shifting of their offense look really early in camp? Are there any hiccups when they're still a young team? Like, Christy Sides made that clear all the time during the season last year. I think they started the year with 8 rookies, or 8 first or second year players, not 8 rookies, 8 first or second year players on their team out of the 13 they had rostered because they had an injury situation. And then it became 7 out of 12 for a lot of the season. And 2 years ago, it was very similar because they had like 6 draft picks, right? This year, it's still a decent number, but not as high of a percentage of their team is first and second year players. Do you see the value of what they've done the last couple of years? We're having a lot of young players at the same time who are asking questions, while having those Amanda Zawi, Emma Cannon veterans on the team to really help lead those players. Does that all kind of come to a head where they look more like established veterans, know what they're doing, ready to go? We can shapeshift very easily offensively. We're ready for a training camp defensively. I think they've grown up. I think they're ready for that. They were really good down the stretch of last season. It was like the best they played. What does that actually look like now that they're going to have to tweak things a little more? That, I think, is going to be one of my key storylines of camp. And this is the first time Christy Sides had a full off season with the team too. So what does that actually matter for how they practice, how they play?
Yeah, excited to see that and excited to see what you write about it. Coming up next, we'll step back and look at the big picture for the Fever this season, as well as Lin Dunn's time as general manager and more. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. It's not too late to bet on who will win the NBA Eastern and Western Conference Finals, as well as who will take home the NBA Championship Trophy. Don't forget the Parlay Builder and Star Player props too. On the NHL side, there's daily specials, playoff specials, and player props. The MLB season is just getting started, and there's so much to choose from batter and pitcher props, and several choices of how to bet on win totals for this season. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. I'm going to talk to you about the length of time between the end of the college basketball season and the start of the WNBA season. I know it's such a short period of time, but I'm still really sad I don't have any women's basketball to watch, and it's only been 2.5 weeks. It truly feels like forever. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. So, Tony, you're entering your 3rd season covering the Indiana Fever. How has the team changed since you started covering them after the 2021 season ended?
Oh, gosh. In every way. I mean, I could just start by reading you the roster they had in 2021. I think that would kind of make the point for me, but like they were still clinging to trying to be, a veteran team that was trying to make the playoffs that year. Marianne Stanley was the coach. Tamika Catchings was the GM at the end of that first full season I did. And like, it was a big deal. They brought in Jessica Breland before that season, Jantel Lavender, Danielle Robinson. Like, that's what they were trying to do, is bring in that crew to go for it and win some games that year. And they didn't. They went 6-26, and it was very confusing to try to figure out what they do from that point, right? How do they get better when they're locked into some contracts? They don't have a ton of like clearly emerging young talent. And that's when they changed everything, right? Lin Dunn comes in as interim GM. Marianne Stanley only coaches 9 more games. They have a bunch of draft picks. in that draft. Nelissa Smith comes in, Emily Engstler, Queen Egbo in the first round, but then of course, Destiny Henderson. Like very quickly, it all changed. Carlos Knox was the coach. Like it's almost unrecognizable what the team was back then versus now. And with the phrase I used, and I actually take this from my old corporate job, unfortunately, because I hate corporatisms, but they would always say, we want to make sure everybody who works here has the right seat on the bus, right? They're doing the job that makes the most sense for them and the structure of our team. And I think that's what the Fever have done from 2021, really the start of that season, even their bubble year till now, is they identified, okay, you know what? We need to step back. We do not have the right coach for a young team. They switch to Carlos Knox, gave him a shot, and then it landed on Christy Sides, a younger coach, right? They needed to make a change in leadership to make it catching steps back. They get Lin Dunn in, someone who has built championship teams before, someone who knows the Fever well, who was close by with Kentucky all these years, who, again, right seat on the bus, said, I have a 3-year plan to help you get out of this. Clearly, there is some ickiness with what's going on with our cap situation, the roster, and now she's not the interim GM, and I think she will last beyond the 3-year plan that she suggested for the team. And slowly but surely, and it sounds funny to say slowly because it's only been 2 years, but, they traded away some of their vets. They made smart draft picks, and all of a sudden the whole team makes sense. It's the right balance, to me at least, of young players who are, ascending or stars or whatever, and the right veterans for them to still have. Erica Wheeler is going to be a vital leader for the team this year. If you have any social media where you can follow Erica Wheeler, it's very obvious how excited she is about filling that role, but she's not the only one, right? And so I think they've just gotten everybody where they're supposed to be in the organization, and it took a while to do it. Like they were really down, and I get why they were trying to do what they did, right? They haven't made the playoffs since 2016, and they had that okay last year with Pokey Chapman before the bubble, but trying to build off of that, going so poorly, going 6-16 in that bubble year and losing a bunch of games. Like they tried to build off of a 13-win season, and that was not the right decision. They should have kept kind of building from there. So they had to really quickly and hard change directions, and they did it. It just took a couple years and a lot of lottery luck finally, which didn't happen before, but they did it. And now, Lin's plan worked. The lottery luck was there. They can never fire Lin because she just wins draft lotteries. So that alone makes it worth it. And now they have what has been a guaranteed championship formula for all of WNBA history, which does not mean it's going to be for the Fever, but every team that's picked first at least 2 years in a row has won the championship, right? Including Dunn Storm with, Lauren Jackson and Sue Bird. So, it's going to be fascinating to see what this is, but Dunn as the architect and the needed changes they need to make just slowly but surely happening one at a time over the years has been fascinating to see. And it's clear that she had a plan and they let her do it. And it's clearly working. I don't think anyone thinks the Fever are not headed in the right direction.
And, with all of that in mind, I know it's still early, but what do you think the floor and ceiling could be for the Fever this season, looking at everything we've talked about, and especially what you just mentioned about the accelerated growth over the last 2 years?
Yeah, it's really fascinating to look at, can their growth catch up with the rest of the league and what's happening around the W in general? They did not make the playoffs last year, and they should be better this year for a couple of reasons, right? They're going to be playing, more established talents at top to bottom in their rotation, right? So that helps a little bit. Adding Caitlyn Clark helps some too, right? So naturally, you think they'd be better than, the 13 and 2017 that they were last year, but they're not the only team that probably thinks, that they're better than last season. The Mercury had the worst record, certainly are going to be better than last year. The Seattle Storm don't even throw out last year completely. They're a whole different team, right? That's another one that's right in the rearview mirror on them. The Mystics, who knows? The Lynx are probably going to be better than last year, and the top 5 teams in the league from last year's standings probably think they're going to be better than last year. So can the Fever crack the playoffs? They were 2 spots away last year. They were in the thick of it until like the last week of the season before losing a couple in a row. Can they hop over 2 teams to get to 8th? Can they catch the Sky, who most people think are not going to be very good this year? I would say so. Can they pass the Sparks? Probably. But then they also have to hold off the Storm and the Mercury. There's a lot of teams that are trying to be good this year. So their floor is probably 9 and not making the postseason at all, which would probably, which would certainly be considered a disappointment, I think, internally, given the moves they've made, the talent they have, the hopes they have to finally be back in the postseason after all these years. But the reason the floor is low is you just never know what to make of rookies. Like Caitlyn comes into the league and it's tough for her, or everybody has DT's mindset of like, I'm coming. I know I'm making your life hard. I'll never forget this. It was a preseason game, but Aaliyah Boston really struggled early with Tierra McCowan, right? Tierra McCowan's a great player, but you come in the league and like the talent level so much higher. You don't just hit the ground like amazing immediately. And Aaliyah Boston ended up being an all-star. So how long do the growing pains last for Caitlyn? So I think it's possible that their floor is 9, but if it all clicks and Caitlyn Clark can be as amazing as she was in the college ranks, and Nelissa Smith is this awesome inside-out threat, and Katie Lou fits perfectly, and all their young players take a step forward, I mean, they could be as good as Atlanta, Dallas range, Minnesota's range to me, and be in that 4, 5, 6 range, no doubt. I don't think there's a way they can catch any of the top 3 from last year in the league, but certainly I think somewhere in the 4 to 9 range is what is possible for the Fever this year.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Do you agree, so much, Natalie? Do you agree with that?
I don't think I have enough Fever knowledge. I mean, with all the evidence you laid out, I agree with what you've laid out. I don't think I have enough knowledge to make an independent decision, but that's why I have you on the podcast.
I need to bounce it off of more people. People are surprised when I say that I don't think it's a lock they're in the top 8, which maybe that means I'm too low on some stuff, but you just never know with a young team what it's all going to look like or if it's all going to come together.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have a feeling that this is going to come up in Slack in the next couple of weeks. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Tony. Where can the listeners find you online?
Yes, tweeting away at Tony R. East. There's going to be a lot of NBA tweets on there. I apologize for that. But they're almost done, and then it's all Fever time. So that works. And then at the next, obviously, is where you can find my work covering the Fever. And they're very interesting and well covered upcoming season. It's going to be such a change from when I started on this beat.
Yeah, excited to see. And thanks to our listeners for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And make sure to tune in the rest of the week to hear more from the amazing Gigi Spear, another episode from me, and our Saturday draft crew as well.